So, what's up, everybody? It's your boy, Jimmy, back at you with another episode of Combat and Cryptids. And here we are. It's Monday, the 17th. So, yeah, and it is snowing in Ohio. Like last week, it was 70 something degrees, close to 80 on some days. And then this week, everything just dropped. The whole bottom just kind of just dropped out of the whole thing. So it kind of really just jacked everything up. Like, everybody was ready to put on shorts, go outside and have a good time. But now we're all stuck inside, back with hoodies. So it kind of really does suck the way the weather kind of swings around here. But we make the best of it, that's for sure. So, yeah, if you guys did not know, so I have an Instagram now. Well, I don't have it. Let me rephrase that. So my oldest daughter is in control of it. So everything that's posted on there, all the reels and shorts and everything like that, she's basically going to start just pulling out either like creepy, like 30-second bits, or like funny stuff or anything dumb that happens and stuff like that. So she's going to be in charge of that. So if you'd like to go give me a follow on Instagram, it's the same as my YouTube. It's Combat and Cryptids. So if you have an Instagram and you want to follow me on there, I'd appreciate it. It's more of just like these shorts of everything, but it's fun. It's something different, just a different platform to get things on and stuff like that. So I hope you guys do appreciate that one. And like always, I appreciate everybody who has liked, subscribed, and commented. I mean, you guys are doing wonderful and great as far as my analytics go. So I appreciate that, and it makes everything enjoyable and fun. So other than that, let's go ahead and get started on today's subject. So I had quite a few different ones that I had want to talk about or am going to talk about, and I just print them off and I just kind of skim through them, and basically some of them I get like they're more geared towards people like what they want to hear and stuff like that, which I'm all about that, but I always like to try and switch it up a little bit every now and then. Do talk about like the weird, like off the wall shit that most people either it's happened to them or is happening to him or something along those lines. It's a lot weirder, I guess. It's not really your typical cryptids as far as like Bigfoot and like Dogman and stuff like that. So this week's subject, we got two stories that we're going to talk about. And the first one is shadow people. And this is a big thing as far as people who have like sleep paralysis and stuff like that. Like people see weird things and stuff, and the first subject we're going to talk about is about like shadow people, and nobody knows where they come from or what it's all about and stuff like that. So it's just kind of this story that this guy put together. His name's Brandon, and he did a pretty good piece on it, and it kind of goes in depth in some sense and everything like that. And then the second half of this, we will go over. So there's been a string of these children, and they're called the black-eyed children. Literally, their eyes are like completely black, and they're more of a demonic thing, and it's pretty creepy. So we'll go over 9 terrifying stories of the black-eyed children, and then from there, we'll just kind of ad-lib and fill it in right there. And then maybe we can go over the Ape Canyon bizarre Bigfoot attack in 1924, depending on how long these take and how fast I read. Sometimes I read fast, sometimes I read slow. But other than that, that's what's going to be the big topic for this week. And the reason why, I guess probably the biggest reason why I wanted to do the shadow people is because so my father lives in Florida, and he lives by himself. And if you didn't know, recently in August of last year, my mom passed away. So, but before she passed away, there's always weird things that always happens around that house. And I think I've told you this guys a few times, but there's always weird things happening around the house. And my dad would always talk. So we went like to the funeral and everything like that, and he was there. And we started talking about all these weird things that were going on. And he always thinks that he sees like a shadow of something. And he's always, and I don't know, he's not going to listen to this, so he's not going to have any voice or opinion on it. But I'm just trying to speak of what he's seeing and stuff like that. But he always talks about like he lives out there by himself, and all he has is I think 5 dogs and a pig, and like his 4th generation of squirrels. I don't know, whatever. He's a little off the wall sometimes. but he's always brought up these stories that are ongoing and going on with him, as far as at nighttime he'll see shadows of people, like either in the hallway or in the corner and stuff like that. And it's just really odd because he was never this type of person um, to believe in those things. I guess like aliens was probably the biggest thing that he was closely related to, like that he could say like, hey, I've seen this and it's a little odd. But this subject is always something that's just it's creeped him out, and it creeps us out too when we listen to it. But yeah, that's the reason why I wanted to look up something that was more geared towards that, and see, have other people seen this, or is this like an ongoing thing, or what's going on with that. So yeah, so he started seeing all these, well, he's still seeing all these different things, and things are like disappearing and stuff like that. And I don't and you could chalk it up to like he's old, he's losing his memory of where like he puts stuff, like his keys, or like stuff that he puts away, and things that he sets down. And he can never ever remember where the things are. And then he'll speak out in the room and be like, all right, mother effer, if you're in here and you got my shit, like, put it back. And then he will leave the room, and this guy has no reason to lie. Like, he doesn't give a shit. This is just him just talking, just kind of like shooting the shit about just things that are going on around him. But he said he would always say that, and then he would leave the room and then come back in, and where his stuff was, like whether it be his house keys or his lighter or a flashlight, whatever it is, would be back in that spot where he had left it. And he could never explain it. And it's very different and odd. And he has one dog in the house. And if you have a dog, or a cat, even at that, I don't really know. I don't have a cat, but they always seem to know things before you do. So if they hear somebody, or if they see something and stuff like that, like, they're always weirded out like that, And he has a dog in the house, and it's always like, he never intrigues or entices anything. Like, hey, I want answers of why this is going on. Like, if it happens, and that's it. And he just brushes it off. That's it. But there's always some weird things that happen, because the dog will get weird and start staring off into nothing, or will be weird in like certain situations when they're in the living room watching TV at night. So, and he usually goes to bed about I would say he usually goes to bed about 10 o'clock, because he's retired, he doesn't have nothing else to do. But it's just always something really weird that he's always brought up, and he's been talking about for the past almost about the past year now, about how he's starting to see these things. And he never wants to try and make conversation with one of these things, because at some point we were always like, hey, like, what if it's our like our mom that's trying to talk to him, or trying to be there for him, or show that. But on the other hand, he's like, what if it's not? And what if it's something bad? Like, you don't ever want to intrigue that or entice that, because at that point you're just inviting something that maybe you don't want to see or be around. And he always tells me like, hey, like, I'll talk to your mom and stuff like that. And I'm like, which is cool. Like, that's what he should do. They were married for 30 plus years. So yeah, that's like a normal thing. But he said he's always very skeptical to do it, for fear that something might answer him back. It's just him and the dog. Unless the dog's learned how to fucking talk, it's not something that he really tries to push for. It's just something that's very odd that he's always been bringing up. Like, every time we have a conversation with him, it's always just something weird like that. So that's what made me want to go over this and talk about it. But yeah. But other than that, so you've no doubt seen or heard of shadow people, but what are they? And Brandon Michael writes, so shadow people have been scaring people for thousands of years. But what are they? Some people believe these humanoid figures are a supernatural spirit or entity that manifests as dark shadows. The history of shadow people date back as early as the 600 CE. Creepy shadows, people stories come from all of the parts of the world, are very eerily similar. The Quran made mention of pitch black sapients being created from fire that were not purely spiritual or physical in nature. Heidi Hollis most recently described shadow people in her book, The Secret Wars, as dark silhouettes with human shapes and profiles that flicker in and out of peripheral vision. But their emergence in popular culture can be attributed to some paranormal investigators who's dedicated their lives to researching and finding these shadow people. But what are shadow people, and where do they come from? So, here's the creepy ass stories, if we want to fucking read them. So they look like huge, ominous black shadows in the shape of a human. So whoever the fuck drew this goddamn picture is already, I think, is a weirdo. Look at this fucking picture. Like, can you imagine that? Like, and I don't know if you've ever been like at night in your house and stuff like that, and you always, as soon as you wake up, it always takes like a second for your eyes to kind of adjust to like the lighting and stuff like that. And you're always like, oh fuck, what is that? Like you always think like, oh shit, it's a person, but it's like a plant in the house or something like that, or maybe it's a light reflection from like your kid's room or something like that. But it always makes you wonder if what you're seeing the first time is actually something that is actually there. So the most common form of shadow person presents themselves in the classic shadow being, which it describes as a dark, inorganic phantom like bipedal figure that just looks like a dark black shadowy figure, but does not seem to quite have full human form or facial or body ailments. They feel very masculine and oppressive and like something that is beyond human and out of our scope of understanding. Natalie Kuna, the psychic medium, describes these figures as tall, about 7 feet in height, though they can configure and transform into different sizes and shapes. Often their limbs, or their arms and their legs, seem quite long and very occasionally fingers seen. Some believe that the dark form is used as camouflage and they take on a rough humanoid form to blend in with us. Other reports seeing shadow people with red or green glowing eyes or even wearing a hat, like the Hat Man, who has often appeared in a cape or a trench coat and a hat, which can range from the top hat to the fedora or a cowboy hat. So some believe that shadow people are extraterrestrial. So if you ever walked up on this, tell me you wouldn't be fucking weirded out. Look at this shit. Like, could you imagine seeing that? Like, that doesn't look like your normal, like, ET. Like a friendly something like that fucking thing looks pissed off. And not something you probably want to mess with. Or at least I'm not going to fucking mess with it, but. So. Author and self-proclaimed people expert Heidi Hollis mentions that shadow people are alien beings in her book. More specifically, she believes the man in the hat to be an extraterrestrial. Some believe the figure hat could be a form of disguise to cover up an unshapely head that could be alien in appearance, or it is some kind of otherworldly technology or even protection device. Theorists believe the man in the hat may belong to an alien species known as the Greys. These types of aliens are what people most associate with extraterrestrials. Others believe they're interdimensional beings. So Natalie Kuna, a psychic medium, describes shadow people as conscious, intelligent, interdimensional beings. She writes that they are able to dematerialize very quickly and shape-shift into other forms such as a figure of a cat, dog, rodent, oddly shaped spider, insect, or other creature or shape. On Kuna's website, she says the man in the hat is an intelligent, conscious form from another dimension or time-space reality, possibly the future. She's not the only one to think that. So there's another person that wrote a book called The Legend Tripping Online. The shadow people are extra-dimensional inhabitants of another universe. So ancient cultures believed in shadow people. Oh yeah, for sure. There's no, like, mythology of shadow people dates back to early 600 BC. Ancient Egyptians believed in shadow people and called them Calibut. Romans believed these people came from the underworld. Greeks thought shadow people were literal shadows of themselves, which they often gave up to Zeus as a gift. All of these cultures, though, had a common belief. These shadows people were both part of the real world and the metaphysical one. In ancient Egypt, in particular, shadow people often went and did the bidding in the spirit world for humans who could not reach it, sometimes for good and sometimes for evil. Most shadow people who Most people who experience shadow people suffer from sleep paralysis. So Dr. Shelley Adler wrote a book that could connect seeing a shadow people to having sleep paralysis. In her book, Sleep Paralysis, Nightmares, and the Mind-Body Connection, people who suffer from sleep paralysis may perceive a shadowy or indistinct shape approaching them or standing over them during an episode, meaning these visions might not be supernatural, but just perception inside your brain. Others, like neuroscientists Balin Jala and VS, believe these hallucinations may have neurological explanations as well. People recall spooky encounters with shadow people while they sleep. Here's a personal account of an encounter with a shadow person from the lineup. While lying there, unable to sleep. That's like everybody. Like if if you've ever been in like bed and stuff like that, and your thoughts probably get the worst of you. Your thoughts always get the best of you, regardless of any situation, whether you're stressed about money, life, girlfriend, boyfriend, whatever it is, any other form in between. You're always thinking about. So your mind's always trying to go 1,000 miles an hour. And at some point, you always try and shut it off and get into like REM sleep and go to sleep and get a good night's sleep. That's what most people do. But a lot of people, like me, my wife, like we have horrible sleep all the time. And sleep paralysis is like one of the scariest things you could ever experience. So I've had it happen a couple times to me, but never like this extreme. But basically, it's basically where you are awake, um, like you're consciously awake. So your mind and everything is awake, but your body is still asleep. So anything that you see or anything that you're thinking about is always hypersensed like by like 1,000. And whatever you see or whatever manifests in front of you as this is going on is basically supposed to be like your body saying, hey, these are your stressors in your life, and these are the things that are bothering you the most right now. So I become aware of a presence, and suddenly, silently, a figure moved through our bedroom and proceeded to our bed. Then, rounding the corner of our bed, took up a fixed position at the foot of our bed. I was aware that the entity was conscious of us and was intently watching us as we lay there. The entity can be best described as something that's had the appearance of black smoke or a shadow. However, it was more material than either of these, but less material than a real person. The most odd thing about this is my lack of fear. Although I was acutely aware of this and of this being and the fact that it was not of earth as we perceive it, it did not seem to arouse any fear response in me. I would say aroused a feeling that would fit somewhere between creepy, awed, and curiosity, especially considering the fact that it was aware of me as I was aware of it. After some time, I almost convinced myself that I was imagining it, but I became aware of the fact that my wife was no longer breathing like she was asleep, but was breathing almost silently. I then said, "Honey, you awake?" To which she answered, "Yes." Then I said, "Do you see anything?" Expecting her to reply with, "What do you mean?" But much to my surprise, she said, "You mean the thing standing at the foot of our bed?" At this time, I became somewhat nervous. We laid there for about 10 minutes, and then it was gone. It was just over a period of about 10 seconds became less solid, and our perception of its presence became weaker, until it just wasn't there anymore. Then it was as if it had never been there. Nothing like this has happened since, and the only evidence it ever existed is my wife's and my memories of it. See, and that's a weird thing. Like for most people, like that's probably um, that's probably the weirdest one, because if you're there laying with someone in the bed and they can see it as well and they're awake and they understand what's going on, like that's what makes it probably the probably the weirdest thing for it is that. So, but who knows? Maybe you're both dreaming. I don't know. Do people have the same dreams? I don't know if I've ever heard of that. Do people have the same like where their dreams or nightmares like at the same exact time? Like I don't know. Maybe I have to look at that. But that would be weird though if you're like synced up, like as far as your sleep, and then whatever is going on with you, you kind of like push it off onto your spouse, and they're like, "What the fuck?" Like I had this, because me and Angel have had a few dreams to where, if she has like a bad night of like, hey, I can't sleep, I had like weird ass nightmares and weird dreams, stuff like that. Like it's always the same thing. And we always thought like maybe like somebody put like, like a voodoo like little witch doll under the bed and stuff like that. But our dog goes under there too much for there to be any fucking thing under there. And if it is something odd, he's gonna fucking chew it up anyways. So it is kind of weird to think that as you're seeing something in this kind of paralysis, that your spouse sees it as well. That's a little odd for me. Shadow people do sometimes attack. In 2003, radio DJ and shadow person expert George Norrie invited Heidi Hollis and Matt Moneymaker, a noted Bigfoot hunter, on this radio show called Coast to Coast to discuss shadow people and the Hat Man. Nori told Hollis and Moneymaker he had heard reports of shadow people attempting to jump on their chests and choke people. This would suggest that shadow people actually have the ability to make contact with the physical realm. Lena Townsend, a registered metaphysical practitioner, Jesus Christ, try and say that fucking 5 times. A registered metaphysical practitioner said while she's no expert with the shadow people, she studied instances where people said they felt antagonized by suspected shadow people. In such cases, she believes these shadow people are more than just an average spirit. They could possibly have demons attached to them. But she said she doesn't think all shadow people are malevolent or harmful. I don't know about that shit. No way you jumping on my fucking chest. Hell no. Some people believe that pure evil, while others believe they're neutral guardians. Kuna claims that most shadow figures are parasitic or evil. Although on rare occasions people claim to have encountered shadow people with neutral auras. Some describe shadow people as benevolent and guardian-like. However, shadow people with red or green glowing eyes are believed to be extremely evil humans who have passed and transformed in this dark, ominous form in order to continue their evil. Malevolent, I think I'm saying that right. Fuck, I hope. I don't know. It looks like Maleficent, but it's not. They are dark force discarnate entities. Townsend herself said the same thing. Not all shadow people are evil, but there are ones that are definitely are. She said this because shadow people feed off the energy they're given. So if there's a spirit, if their spirits are stuck between of a negative experience, they can become evil, while others living in a positive environment won't feel motivated to lash out. They can be repelled by invoking the name of Jesus Cristo, otherwise known as Jesus. Hollis told a story on an episode of the Coast to Coast in 2006 that shadow people can be repelled by various means, including invoking the name of Jesus. Kuna agreed on her website, just say Jesus' name can be enough. They are instantly repelled and banished. The light is too strong. Kuna also provided a number of alternative methods to banish shadow people, such as say protective prayers. A super powerful one is the Archangel Michael prayer of protection. Be very vocal, yell out to them, demand that they leave, laugh out loud at it, put on some loud music, use sage, full sage the area, yourself, all family members, and the home in a banishing ritual. See, but that's like a hard thing to do. Like that, like I get that aspect of it, like the spirit, like the religious part of it. But if you're like if you're in that, well, most people are saying that they don't feel threatened by it. So why would you, or they can't do anything. So what? How could your first, like, I don't care like how many times I've said it or know something. Like when you're put into a situation where you're like basically paralyzed, either from shock or nervousness or whatever it is, the last thing you're gonna remember is to say that. And maybe, I don't know, maybe if you go to church enough, maybe it'll be easier to do it that way. But I don't go to church a lot, so for me, this would be a hard thing to do because I'd be like, man, what the hell did he tell him to say? Play loud music, like I'm talking to my Alexa or something like that. Like I don't know, like I wouldn't think to do that. The same thing if you saw like a Bigfoot or an alien or a dogman or something like that. Like everyone always has these things to say, like hindsight afterwards, you know, and those are always the weird things. Like, oh, well, you should have did this. Well, yeah, after the fact, motherfucker. But during the chaos and everything that I'm going through, that's the last thing on my mind. My thing on my mind is to fucking wake up and get up and get the hell out of there. Not be like, oh man, what was that damn thing I was supposed to say? Like, no, most people ain't gonna do that. Well, most normal people, I guess. I don't know. I guess I'm not normal. I'm not gonna do that though. I'm gonna be like, what the fuck was I supposed to say, man? I don't know. Gee, left, right, A, B, A, B, like that kind of. I don't code, whatever. So The Nightmare is a documentary about sleep paralysis that features reenacts of encounters with shadow people. In 2015, director Rodney Asher premiered a sleep paralysis documentary, The Nightmare, at the Sundance Film Festival. It features 8 people who suffer from sleep paralysis and recreates their experiences with professional actors. Many of the encounters involve the Shadow Man, who is played by Stephen Yvette. Shadow people are very popular in pop culture. Is it? I've never even heard of the shadow people till today. Like, never even heard of it. So I don't know. I don't get how it can be like this huge thing when I've never. I don't know. It's just What the hell's the rest of this? All the rest is just ads and shit like that. But yeah, I mean, shadow people. Like, apparently it's a big thing. And I mean, if you guys have heard anything about shadow people, or you guys believe in this thing, or have seen this, I mean, fuck, let me know. I mean, I don't know. Apparently it's a huge thing, or a huge issue that a lot of people have, I guess, but nothing. I guess nothing that could be like, oh yeah, no, that's like pretty normal. Like Sasquatch, yeah, that's a big one. Heard of that one? Aliens, that's a big one. Heard of that one? Um, Dogman, pretty good stories. Heard of that one? Shadow people, like, I mean, I guess I've heard of, like, but you would think you would chalk that up as ghosts, like most people would. Like, you wouldn't think, and that's the one thing that this article never mentions. It never says that like ghosts and shadow people are the same thing. They are very different. Like, I guess is ghosts are more, but I mean they're the same concept. I guess they're like trapped spirits that are trying to do something or figure something. I don't know, but like shadow people never gets mentioned as ghosts or vice versa. It's either they're ghosts and this is the reason why it's a ghost, or shadow people are supposedly good but they're not. Like, I don't fucking know. Like, it just sounds odd to me. But yeah, shadow people. And the only reason why I wanted to figure out something about it was, I mean, because everything going on with my dad. Like, it was just a little odd that, in the past year, that all of these kinds of things were kind of culminating and happening. So I just thought I'd talk about it and see what the hell, what it was all about. And there's a lot of stuff about them, actually. There's a lot of stuff. I mean, but what I don't get is you can have 500 eyewitness accounts and stories and stuff about Bigfoot, the Loch Ness Monster, even if you wanted to go that deep. But to look up stories besides this article, like, there's not many like personal encounters with it. And most of them are, if they are, they're not shadow people. They're more of like ghosts. Like, that's what most of them chalk up to be, is a ghost of some sort. Either somebody got murdered in there before, or something happened in their previous life. I don't know. But for the majority of it, it's not really, there's not too many of them. So, which I thought was odd for something that's so big in like the media, as far as like that. Like, there's like 5 or 6 movies that have been made about it, for people going over their encounters and stuff. And like, I've never even heard of it, to be honest. So, the next one, 9 terrifying stories about the black-eyed children. So I don't know if you guys have ever seen the movie The Children of the Corn, I think is what it's called. But that's a creepy ass movie. Like, kids, like, already, let me start this out. Kids are already creepy little things. Yeah, I mean, like, I'm talking like 9 to like 3. Whenever they can walk, and they can start to do stuff and on their own. Like, that's when kids are the creepiest, if I'm being honest. I remember when my oldest was like 3 or 4, I had the worst nightmare that she was like a Chucky, and she was going to have like a knife, and she was going to like stab me and kill me. Like, legit nightmare. And that was terrifying. And I told Angel about that, and it was so terrifying. I was like, oh my God, what would make me think of that? Like, I don't know why. But yeah, that was creepy as shit. And by the way, these 2 stories, she's the one who was like, hey, you should talk about these. Like, Kensley was like, oh, talk about this. But Gab was like, oh no, let's talk about this. Because she's all into like, ghosts and spiritual and all that stuff. She's all into that stuff. So I figured I did the Bermuda Triangle for Kensley, so might as well just do this for Gab. But yeah, anyways, black-eyed children. And I ain't talking about like black-eyed, like black-eyed, like their eyes, like where you're like normally like white and your eyes is black too. So creepy stories about the black-eyed kids have several things in common. First, it seems to take a while for people to notice the children's eyes. You would think that would be the first thing you see, but somehow the children seem to be able to temporarily shield their eye color even from those looking directly at them. Another common theme is the instant feeling of unease and dread that people experience the moment they get close to one of these creepy children. They don't need to see their eyes to know that there's something wrong with them. The mind may not be able to immediately process what exactly is going on with black-eyed children, but in most of these stories, survival instincts kick in pretty quickly. For many of these witnesses, it's a primal, full-body experience of terror. And that's another weird thing. Like most people freeze and don't know what to do if you like encounter like a Bigfoot or like a dogman and stuff like that. Like you freeze. But when it comes to like, and I don't know if it's maybe because it's so human like that's what makes it like weird. But these people, like as soon as anything happens, like these stories are so short because they're immediately over as soon as they happen because people see that there's something wrong and they're like, no, fuck that, I'm not dealing with that. So yeah, so the children tried to get a young man to walk them home in 1950. So this was and see, this is always the same time. All these weird accounts and all these weird stories, aliens, Bigfoot, everything always comes out at the same time, always around the same time. It's just so weird how how it all came about. Like how like in that 20-year span, so many accounts and so many extraterrestrial, cryptid, ghosts, demons, whatever you want to call it, all of it came out at the same time. And it's just it's just that's going over and doing this podcast. Probably this has shown me that a lot of weird things happened around these time frames, but no one ever said anything about it. Because this is 9 stories. How many other people have had this shit happen? And this is all over the country. You know, it's not like just in one fucking area. This is a lot of different places that this happened. So it was just really, really odd to see this story pop up around the same time all the other shit pops up. So, one of the earliest recorded sightings of black-eyed children was back in 1950. A 16-year-old named Harold was strolling up the street to his Virginia home when he noticed a boy leaning on a nearby fence. Harold said hello but received no response. He turned to leave, then the mysterious boy finally spoke. I want to go to your house. You're going to walk me up to your house. That was when Harold noticed the boy's eyes. They were pitch black. All his instincts, that shit gave me goosebumps. All his instincts screamed run, yet he stood there. Then, as if reading Harold's mind, the boy said, now, don't you run away from me. You're going to walk me up to your house. That was enough to spring Harold into action. He booked it out of there. He claimed he heard the children let out a scream of a bobcat, but he wasn't willing to turn around to be sure. The account goes on to reveal Harold's parents actually believed his tale, and his father went out with his gun in hand looking for what they believed was a devil. The black-eyed child was gone, but Harold's mother demanded he go to the local priest to be safe. The children stopped a journalist and demanded a ride. What the fuck? That's so weird. That picture is weird as fuck. Journalist Brian Bethel of Abilene, Texas, is credited with being the first person to post an online account of black-eyed children phenomena. It all began back in 1996. Bethel was sitting in his car writing out a check he intended to drop off a nearby internet provider office. He was startled by the sound of a knocking on his window and looked up to see 2 kids. All right, let me pause that. Have you guys ever seen Nosferatu? That fucking show? If you've never seen that show, you need to watch that show. You want to talk about some creepy ass kids, and that's what these kids remind me of. Is those kids? It's basically this dude who like takes kids who are like deprived and beat and all this stuff, and claims he's gonna take them all to the promised land and be all cool with them and everything like that. But he ends up taking like their good and makes them all fucking evil. And anybody who goes there that's not invited to Candyland is basically like torn apart and murdered and eaten and stuff like that. So if you've never seen Nosferatu, you should watch that show. It's pretty fucking crazy. All right. Anyways, he was startled by the sound of knocking on his window and looked up to see 2 kids. He couldn't figure out why, but a jolt of fear ran through him. They were just kids, but something was wrong with them. He just couldn't figure out what. He cracked his window just enough to talk with them. The oldest of the 2 boys asked for a ride to their mother's house. He claimed they were going to see a movie, forgot their money, and needed a ride so they could make it back for the movie in time. The movie theater was close enough that Bethel could read the marquee, so he asked the boys what were they going to see. Mortal Kombat was the reply. Brian knew that the movie had already started an hour ago. Also, there was just something wrong with the pair. The way they spoke wasn't natural. They didn't sound as young as they looked. Just let us in, and we'll be gone before you know it. We'll go to our mother's house. Everything the older boy said sent shivers down Bethel's spine, but then he saw it. The pitch black eyes lacking any resemblance or soul, Bethel didn't even try to hide his horror. Come on, mister, we won't hurt you. You have to let us in. We don't have a gun. What? That's odd. Why would you say that? Like, yeah, no shit, motherfucker. I wouldn't let you in anyways. Like just because you said that, I mean, I'm like, oh, you ain't got a gun? Like, yeah, sure, let's go in. So the more he spoke, the more Bethel was sure he had to get out of there. He threw his car in reverse, the boy still yelling to be let in, and sped off. He gave one quick glance behind him, but saw nothing. The black-eyed boy simply vanished before he even made it out of the parking lot. The children menaced a gas station attendant during a power outage. A gas station attendant in northeast Louisiana. See, you went from Louisiana to Virginia. Like, you're going all, like, and to have these so many different accounts of this, but all of them have the same vibe and the same kind of a story. Like, how could you make this up? And the time span for all of these is so different. 1950, 1996. This one's in 2012. It's just so odd to me that how would you even make this up? So, yeah. A gas station attendant in northeast Louisiana had a terrifying encounter in November 2012. The gas station was creepy enough to begin with at 3 a.m., but then the power went out. Led by the light of his cell phone, the attendant was able to get the generators going. But the backup lighting was dim, only lit up certain areas, like the cash area in the parking lot, while the rest of the isolated establishment was cloaked in black. Out in that darkness, he noticed movement. 3 children on bikes were heading his way. They stood at the door and stared at the attendant. He felt creeped out, but they were just kids. It's way too late for them to be out. He opened the door and asked if they were okay. The young girl asked to use his phone, but as he handed his cell phone over, he realized her eyes were all black. No, I need the real one. She pointed at the landline inside. The thought of letting her inside sent chills up his spine. He shouted at all of them to leave as he slammed the door and locked it. They stood there a bit longer, silently staring at him through the glass, with their solid black eyes. Then they got back on their bikes and disappeared back into the darkness. The next morning, the attendant was eager to go through the surveillance footage. Unfortunately, the power outage cut the cameras off and they didn't boot back up with the generator. He had nothing to prove the events of the night before took place. The children stalked an engineer through his security cameras. An engineer working the night shift for a data center in Ohio had a creepy exchange and posted his tale anonymously as Noetic. It was around 5 a.m. on July 31st, 2010. Noetic was taking a smoke break outside when he noticed 2 teenage boys standing motionlessly and staring at him from across the street. Though he felt somewhat unnerved, he finished his smoke and went back inside. 10 minutes after heading inside, the intercom buzzed. Noetic checked the monitors, and there they were. The 2 boys had made their way over to his building and were now staring into the surveillance cameras like they could see him through it. Through the speaker, he asked what they wanted. They said nothing, but motioned for him to come outside. He hit the speaker button again and told them to go away. They didn't leave, but continued to stare into the camera as if they were watching Noetic as he worked. After a short while, Noetic went to the door to chase them off. Right before opening the door, he saw them through the one-way glass and was horrified to see their eyes were completely black. He knew he had to open up the door and tell them to go away, and he decided he called the police if he had to, as if the boy read his mind. The moment the door opened up, he said, "That will not be necessary, sir. We will simply need to use your phone. Can you let us in?" Noetic was not about to fall for that nonsense. He pulled out his cell phone and threatened to call the police if they didn't leave. He made sure the door was locked and went back to the monitor. Only one boy was still staring at the camera. Then he realized the second boy positioned himself out back and was staring into the camera there. By 6 a.m., both boys had moved into a blind spot with no camera coverage. Noetic waited for them to reappear, but they simply vanished. The police arrived not too long after, but both the boys were gone. A couple let the children in their home and suffered from terrible illness afterwards. In January 2016, a Vermont woman reported that she had actually let black-eyed children into her home. A little over a year prior, a blizzard was ravaging the world outside her door, so she was very surprised to hear a loud knock Figuring someone probably crashed her car trying to navigate the weather, she made her way to the front door and peeked out the window. There was no car. She described a feeling of dread washed over her for a reason she couldn't understand. The banging continued, so she decided to wake her husband to let him answer instead. Two small children were on the other side of the door, and they were not dressed appropriately for the storm. The woman and her husband let the little boy and girl inside, despite the great sense of unease their presence made them feel, and regretted it almost instantly. One cat hissed, while the other three hid, unusual behavior for them, and it didn't seem to matter that the woman asked them, "What happened? Are you lost? Want some cocoa?" The answer was always the same: "Our parents will be here soon." She made them cocoa anyways, and when she returned with their mugs, that's when she noticed their eyes. They were completely jet black, with no whites at all, just giant black pupils. They asked for the bathroom, and she directed them to it. Then everything happened all at once. Her husband's nose started bleeding. The power went out, and as she rushed to get a tissue, she was confronted by both children staring at her from the hall. "Our parents are here." Then they walked out the front door. She watched as the creepy children got into a black car with two very tall men in suits. They left. Within months of the encounter, three of their four cats went missing. The fourth, the one that hissed, was found in a pool of blood, dead from a hemorrhage. Her husband's nosebleeds continued, and he was eventually diagnosed with skin cancer. Despite spending little time outdoors, the woman began suffering from chronic nosebleeds, and her husband initially had, and her health began slowly deteriorating. She is certain it is because of the black-eyed children. What the fuck? That is fucking crazy. Like, see, man, I don't know what you would do in that kind of situation. Yeah, like, what would you do? Like, most people are, most people are pretty normal, and they kind of, they're just, it's just kind of normal, and they have a heart and they have a soul. And if you're in a like blizzard, like here in Ohio, it fucking snows a lot. And me and my wife, like, we would, without a doubt, let the kids in, because that's what you would normally do. But if you felt uneasy about something, like, you're not going further than my front door. Like, the warmth is there, you're good there. That way, if I got to boot your little ass out because your eyes turn black, I can fucking kick you out real quick. But if my dog, well, my dog feels uneasy about everything. But if we feel uneasy, like, the chances are, like, that's not for no reason. And I got a pretty good sixth sense about people and how, if they're weird or if they're not and stuff like that. So for the majority of it, I don't know, what would you guys do? Would you let the kids in, and then they're gonna start spouting off some shit, and then your husband's nose starts bleeding, and then they fucking get out and they go into a car? Like, I'm going out there to be like, "Hey, motherfucker!" Like, at that point, I'm getting a gun and I'm seeing what the fuck is going on. Because you're not gonna come in, scare the shit out of my cats, scare the shit out of my wife, and then just all of a sudden disappear and stand in the hallway with these fucking black eyes for no reason. Like, I don't know. What do you think you'd do? Would you help them? Or would you be like, "Nah, the police are on their way," like that? I don't know. Maybe we'll do that. I don't know. We'll have to see. If you're ever put in that situation, you never know. The black-eyed children caused a fatal car accident. John Northwood was heading to his car on the third floor of a parking garage when one of the guys from the conference he just attended, Doug, asked him to drive him around the block a few times. He said there were some freaky looking kids hanging around his car and was hoping to kill some time while waiting them to wander off. John let Doug in and started cruising. When they neared his car, John saw the group Doug was talking about and agreed they were creepy. 3 kids, 2 boys and a girl, all gothed out. They looked about 15. The boys around 14 and 10. They were intense, but John described it as he really needed to look at them. He stopped driving. The kid maneuvered around his car, and the youngest one said, "It's scary out there all alone, and we just wanted a ride home." One said Doug had offered them a ride home, which he denied. John felt as if his heart was going to erupt from his throat as adrenaline raced through him. Doug said he was getting out of his car. As soon as he reached for the handle, it was like the children got older somehow and saw their eyes were solid black. No pupil, no iris, nothing, just black. John threw the car in reverse, drove backwards about 60 feet. The kids began to pursue them, so John took the car around the lot's corner going about 30 miles an hour. He felt that they would that he felt that he felt that they would die if he let those kids get in the car. He sped down 3 floors only to find the oldest one was already at the bottom of the garage when they came out. They sped past him out of the garage. When John turned around, the boy was gone, and so was the menacing feeling that had been building inside them since making contact with those kids. What the fuck is going on with my camera? Can you see that shit? It just gets blurry for some reason. So they waited 10 minutes before going to Doug's car. The black-eyed children were nowhere in sight. It was then that Doug admitted he had given the younger kid a ride earlier, but felt scared upon leaving the garage for the second time that night. The menacing feeling returned. John was behind Doug's car watching helplessly as he misjudged the time it would take to get through the intersection on a yellow light. Doug was struck by a truck and died instantly. The police arrived and John gave him his report, feeling uneasy the whole time. Only then did he look around and see the black-eyed children standing 2 blocks away staring at him. All right, I can't read the next one because it's not PG. I guess is the nice way to say it. So, yeah, we'll go on to the next one. A young woman returned home to find the children waiting in her yard. 18-year-old Karis Holdsworth was heading home to her apartment after a night out. It was just before 11 p.m. She noticed there were 2 teenage boys she had never seen before, just standing in her yard. This put her on edge a bit, so she reached in her purse to make sure her pepper spray was readily available. With a firm grip on her only weapon, she attempted to sneak past them unnoticed. No such luck. They both turned simultaneously. She instantly felt a primal terror and gripped the canister still in her purse, as if they knew what was hiding in her bag and what she was thinking. The other one said, "No need for that. We just want to borrow your phone, miss." It was then that Holdsworth noticed her eyes, pitch black, no white at all. She felt her flight response kick into gear as she darted for her door, fumbling for her keys as the black-eyed boys followed her. "Please, miss, my mother won't be happy if she doesn't know where we are." Every instinct in her knew she had to get away from that. Part of her felt a twinge of guilt and considered helping them, but that feeling was quickly buried in the deep sense of dread that was steadily washing over her. She made it inside and slammed the door shut and locked it. With a sigh of relief, she headed for her kitchen, but then came the knock. She decided to ignore it. They knocked again, and that feeling of dread began to make its way through her body. She decided she'd brave a silent peek through the peephole. There they were, staring at her through the peephole like they could see inside. "Just let us in to use the phone," one said. "We won't hurt you. We have no weapons to hurt you with." Holdsworth ordered them to leave her alone. She made sure everything was locked tight and called a friend to come over. The boys didn't leave until the friend showed up, who felt the same overwhelming sense of danger when she arrived. Holdsworth soon moved away after that and now always checks her peephole before opening the door. A Marine was visited twice by the same children. A 6'7", 260-pound United States Marine was his own looming and intimidating force of nature, but that didn't stop a black-eyed kid from testing him. He was in the barracks of the Texas base where he lived, and settling in for the night when he heard a sharp knock on the door. Assuming it was his neighbor, the Marine made his way to the door. Standing outside was a boy around 17 years old. The Marine asked him what's up, and almost hungrily the boy asked to be let in to use his phone. Nothing but sleep and peace on his mind, the Marine said no and directed him to the service building across the parking lot and closed the door. He knocked again. Irritated, the Marine went to the window intending to yell at him, but just looking at the thin, gaunt kid gave him creeps. That's when he noticed his eyes. They were black as coal. Once again, the child asked to be let in with a creepy, predatory smile. Still determined to assert his authority, the Marine ignored his fear and said he'd force the kid to leave if he had to. He told him momentarily to grab his phone, but by the time he turned around, the child was gone. He couldn't shake that feeling that he had seen him before, that all of this was familiar. Then it hit him. He had been watching his brother have similar interactions once. 2 years earlier, while still in high school and living in Pennsylvania, he worked a night shift at a gas station. One night, while having a smoke on front with his brother, they saw some kid walking across 4 lanes towards him. His brother asked him if he needed anything, and it was the same request he wanted to use the phone. The brother said the phone was back by the register and no one was allowed to use it. The brothers went inside, but the strange kid didn't take no for an answer. He stood in front of the shop, just knocking on the window, until the brother chased him off with a bat. When he came back, he said the kid was pale and had black eyes. It was the same kid. So, fucking kids are creepy, man. I'm telling you, like, I don't know what, like, people here are just like, I don't know. And I just stumbled upon this one and I was like, man, this fucking, reading these stories gives you the chills. Like, so I can only imagine like that. Like, and some of them are older. Like, some of them are 17, some of them are 10. Like, that's just, I don't know, between shadow people and creepy kids with black eyes, like, that does it for me. So, I mean, I don't know. I don't know what the hell. But, I mean, I got my 9-year-old. So, my 9-year-old is probably, she's pretty creepy. And she tries to scare the shit out of me all the time. Like, all the time. And most times, it doesn't work, you know, because I can always, like, she's always, like, hiding in, like, a weird spot where you can see her from the mirror or something stupid like that. But I could see, like, if you saw, like, a 9-year-old and that happened and that was like weird, like it would be very easy to get uneasy about that. But when when kids are at that age, like, and they seem helpless, like, you always want to try and do the right thing, because what if it's not like that? Like, what if it is like a child who's like needs help, but if their eyes turn like all black? I don't know about that. That's just, that shit would freak me out, man. If I'm being honest, that would freak me out. But I don't know. What's your guys' opinion? Do you think it's creepy? Do you think these people are making this stuff up? Or what else do you guys think is out there that's weird like that? I mean, I couldn't tell you, man. I just know that story, those 9 stories, I was like, Jesus Christ, these people are, like, the one guy who fucking drove the car off the back and then he died, like, right after that in a car accident. Like, Jesus. I don't know, man. That shit would be scary as fuck, though, man. But other than that, that's it. That's this week's podcast. So I hope you guys enjoy it. Don't watch it at 2 a.m. That's for damn sure. Because, yeah, that shit's going to be creepy right there. Because any sound you hear or anything you see is going to fucking weird you out. But, I mean, it's already going to do it for me. But I'm kind of used to it now. You know? Well, not used to it in the sense I want to be used to it, but used to it in the sense where I'm like your vibe attracts your tribe. So you talk about these things, and then here in a few hours, I'm going to go to sleep. So it's like already still on my mind. But other than that, I mean, guys, just let me know what you guys think about this one. I thought it was a different one. It's kind of weird. It's kind of odd, but it's kind of creepy at the same time. Like, you know, it's not like Bigfoot ripping somebody's arms off or anything like that, but it is a little odd, man. And it bears some explaining. That's for sure. So I hope someday something comes to light about it. I don't know. That's just weird. And the kids in the snow, and then the people pick them up. Like, that's just, hell no, man. I don't know about that. But other than that, that's it, guys. I appreciate you guys stopping by. Be sure to leave a like, you know, share it, comment it, subscribe, whatever you want to do. And other than that, be good to everyone. Take care of yourself. And I will catch you guys in the next one.